So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Ben Reason, who is a founding partner of Livework Studio.
That's right.
Hi Ben, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
So Ben, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a bit about the work that you do and a bit about you as well, and kind of how you've kind of come to here?
Yeah, so Livework's a service design business. We've been around for 15 years now. We the core team and the founders have a design background, and our kind of route into what we do now was coming from more of a digital and internet world before we started the firm, and getting really excited about the broader world of services and how technology and people and other components come together to create value for customers and experiences. So we're a bit different. We're kind of a bit of a hybrid firm because we're design and we make stuff and we do stuff. We help people kind of take things forward, but we also get involved in more strategic, more consulting opportunities.
Do you go full kind of down the value chain as well in terms of kind of helping people implement? And
we'll do research projects, so the insight-oriented stuff, all the way through to kind of holding hands to launch something, make sure that
it gets embedded in the culture and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, customer advocacy through making sure that it doesn't get diluted.
Yeah, or doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah,
or falls off somebody's reporting dashboard.
And we work in, with customers and service are our thing. We don't have we're incredibly lucky. We work in all sorts of sectors. We're doing stuff for higher education, mobility.
These guys are construction, aren't they?
Maintenance of elevators.
Right. Okay. There you go.
Yeah. So it's been a good journey.
So, and the reason for this, the reason we scheduled this talk, one is because I know one of your fellow partners, Melvin, that we've interviewed in the past, but he told me that you've just published a book, and I have it right in front of me. It's called Service Design for Business. And the long title is A Practical Guide to Optimizing the Customer Experience. How did it come about? Why now?
Melvin's part of the story. We when Livework got to 10 years old, so most of our work was really around the customer experience. We found that we were having a lot of interest. We were doing a lot of interesting work. We weren't satisfied with the impact we were having on.
Sure.
So not enough things were going forward, or there was something wrong. And because the team is from a design background, we thought the gap's probably in an understanding of the organisation that's receiving the design, how it translates into change or operations. So we've been working with Melvin as a client before. We were talking, and then he joined us. So Service Design for Business isn't just a book, it's kind of the journey that Livework's been going on. It's like, how do you do this?
Sort of accumulated knowledge in many ways.
Yeah, and how do you make it more business relevant and usable? So the book is really to kind of put a line in the sand saying this is an evolution of our practice.
I've got a song in my head now which goes, "This is how we do it." I'm not going to break into song, but that sort of is almost a statement of like, this is how we do it. This is our approach, our philosophy, and
trying to talk to people who aren't designers,
and making design make sense for business success.
So the book's structured around 12 challenges which we've seen our clients have, or a number of our clients have. Some are challenges when a business comes along and says, "Oh, hang on, customer experience is a thing. How do we tackle that?"
Right.
Others are more classic business challenges, like how do we innovate? How do we take new products forward?
And do those 12 challenges, do they split out into sort of different sort of sections, or is it just like 12?
Yeah, so 4 around the customer and customer experience, 4 around business drivers, and 4 around more organisational challenges like engaging staff or being more flexible, agile, those kind of things.
And can you give me a couple of examples of those type of challenges and sort of like how you would address them in the book, just to give me a sort of a flavour of how you would go about it?
Start at the beginning. We just talk about helping people talk through what how you deal with a customer experience, how you actually sort of get to grips with what the good components and the bad components are, and how you might work through identifying customer pains, translating them into solutions, prioritising those kind of quite practical stuff.
Right.
And then all the way through to there's another there's another section which is about the organisation and about engaging your colleagues and peers in the process of doing this. Because we've found one of the things that design has to offer is a good kind of collaborative tool set. That we see lots of businesses aren't actually very good at working together to make something.
They talk about it.
They go to meetings, they talk, they leave the meeting, they forget what they discussed. They don't put any pen to paper.
There's an old saying which says, well, maybe it's not so old, but it says, you join a company but you're loyal to your function.
Right.
And that sort of almost explains why some stuff doesn't doesn't happen. And I guess that's a big challenge for many firms.
Yeah, and we have an old saying, which is the only person everyone's got in common is the customer. You know, whether you're legal or you're, customer service. We have tools to help people look at that as an alignment. So we talk about aligning around the customer experience.
I mean, but that's a really big challenge because actually, many people talk about being customer centric and the purpose of the business is to find and serve and customers, quote Drucker back in the day, and yet many companies still don't necessarily get it right. But that's not really a design sort of thing. But I guess that's where you're creeping into with the whole sort of service design sort of thing. It's like,
I think and traditionally we would have applied ourselves to sort of visualizing, imagining the customer experience, and then translating that into tangible kind of specifications of channels that you're using. So you can say, okay, here's the experience we want people to have, here's the online component of that, and it would be quite a sort of specification-oriented design, recognisable as design.
Yeah.
What we've sort of learnt is how that kind of behaviour, which works quite well in an industrial setting, because you say, here you go, go and create tools, create product, but there is no tooling, the tooling of the service is...
the widget that fits in that space.
So the tooling is the organisation, so if you can't work with the organisation... So we sometimes sort of think that service design is more of an activity that everybody does, and it's useful to have some designers in the mix, because they're not normally present in the kind of businesses we're talking about.
So I guess it's because you're talking about the three different kind of elements. I think that you're talking about with the different challenges. That's the customer story, the business impacts, and the organisational sort of challenge. And if I was to, I guess you handle all of those in the book and sort of go into kind of detail about them all. But I mean, would you say that activity from a service design perspective of the work that you do is it spread evenly across that, or is it spiked depending on the kind of the challenge and the client, or how does that?
Yeah, so defining the challenges definitely came out of looking at the work we've done probably over the last more recent years.
Sure.
So it's definitely each challenge has a case study, which is a sort of slightly abstracted but real piece of work we've done. Some of them, so for example, there's one which tells the story about we worked with a large transport organisation and ended up running a design process with about 800 of their station staff.
Right.
So what we were responding to was the organisation's need to engage their staff in a change, which is not somewhere I imagined we'd be working when we started out.
Yes.
So some challenges are things that we've said, oh wow, we can work in this space, whereas others are things we've probably done for longer.
Okay. So I mean, maybe it would be useful just to give us a sort of a flavour of some of the stuff that's in the book, but also just about the work that you do. Is could you talk about you use slightly sanitised case studies and things in the book, obviously, but could you give us a couple of examples just of companies that have engaged or benefited from your sort of approach and the sort of benefits they've got out of it?
Okay.
Because that sort of brings it to life.
So we've got definitely close to being a favourite client in Norway, which is a large insurance company called Jens Seediger, who probably 6-7 years ago had a chief exec mandated customer orientation program. So they kind of bought that whole hang on a minute, we need to do better by our customers.
We're leading the charge.
Partly because they're dominant in the market, that they needed to retain.
Do something different.
Yeah. So we've been part of that program. We haven't delivered everything within there by any means, but it's quite a nice spread. So we've, in fact, the first piece of work we did was helping them, kind of challenging their model, and so they said,
right,
what would more simple insurance look like? And we looked at personal and
are they full service insurance?
Yeah,
right.
They're very big. So we looked at the sort of life and illness kind of area, and looked at the more product, home, car, TV side, and said, what if you kind of, there are huge numbers of different insurance products in here, how could we make that more simple? And created scenarios for that and prototypes, so we were actually able to go out to people and say, this is what it might be like to use this simplified personal cover. The insight we had was that often these things were hard to understand, but also just really expensive.
Yeah.
And there was an opportunity to do something
so
to fit it more around people's budgets.
So you're talking about actually doing almost like a whole life, whole person insurance product, which covers everything. Yeah. It's all in a pot.
Yeah, and the other thing was, and relates to the other thing in your life, which is the state and what they offer you. So that's kind of one end of, I think, the spectrum of what we do is quite innovative.
Yeah.
Really rethink your service model. Through to we worked on just really simple things about improving the way you experience a claim for travel insurance, which is much more about understanding the customer's side of it, which is, I'm on holiday, I've just lost all my clothes, I'm freaking out, and I phone you up and you ask me for my policy number. and it's just like, where's the empathy? I don't have it, of course I don't, I'm in Sicily. And we managed to just change that, so the first thing the member of staff did was said, well, tell me what's happened, how are you? But then what was interesting with this one was that customers were really reassured if someone actually asked them what the problem was and how they were.
Yes.
But if the agent captured that information, was able to capture that information, and we actually saw some smart agents would write it on a post-it or something. Yeah. But then it would actually save them a huge amount of time in looking after that customer because they'd already have the information they needed. So then we ended up helping re-engineer the CRM system.
Okay.
So it's quite a nice kind of all the way from insight into actually working with some,
it's like a business process kind of element.
Changing the business process a little.
Excellent.
So that client has been multiple projects, so we've ended up getting into fun spaces. Like they bought another travel insurance firm, so we actually were hired by the M&A team to do a customer bit of it.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Excellent. Any other examples that sort of spring to mind? Just like favourite clients, so you go, that's a piece of work, or maybe it's just like a short piece of work, but you go, that's cool, and it's in the book.
That's something that's in the book. So I mentioned earlier this whole thing around kind of aligning around the customer and engaging people. The client we're talking about there is this organisation here in the UK called JISC, who provide shared services across higher education. So some of them are very deep sort of technology platforms like Janet and things like that. And we've been working with them over the last couple of years on a program called Co-Design, which is how they work with their stakeholders in the universities to prioritise R&D efforts and things like that.
Right.
Nice mix of like really collaborative working and then getting into rapid development of new offers and testing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So some people that might be listening to this or reading through this might turn around and go, yeah, service design or design thinking and all this sort of stuff, and how it applies to the customer experience, and I'm a customer experience kind of manager, and people talk about it, and I sort of nod knowingly, so kind of, pretending kind of like that I know what I that I know what you're talking about. But if I was to say to you, given you're an experienced practitioner in the space, and the book's just going to come out, other than recommending people to buy the book, we'll give you a chance to do that kind of later. Where would you recommend people start if they're? Because I guess sort of embracing service design and design thinking within the kind of business and the whole customer experience domain.
Yeah.
It's a journey. You have to start somewhere. So to do that, where would you advocate people start if they're new in their journey? Is it?
Right. Well, I think almost the thing that you have to do is start bringing the customer into the organisation in a really tangible way.
Right.
So I think going and talking to customers and videoing what they have to say about something that you do to them.
But is that? But would you do that? Are you suggesting doing that in a more formal setting, like kind of market research, or are you more just kind of immersion and observation?
More immersion and storytelling, and we get a lot out of taking people out into the field.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah, to ride along, all that kind of thing. So that feels like the kind of obvious place to start explaining.
It's almost like getting a visceral feel for what it's like.
To make it visceral. And then something we're talking about a lot in the book is about how to. So I remember being asked to give a talk in healthcare in the NHS once, and deciding I was going to tell them all that they were scared of their customers, because I think one of the problems is if you start doing that sort of and you hear all these irritations, all these pains,
sure,
and you go and tell people and they're like, yeah, what do you want me to do about it? You're just telling me I'm stupid and wrong, and so you also need to help people give them a process for coming up with ideas and realising that they can impact on this.
Sure.
So we've done quite a lot of work with British Gas recently, where we're sort of giving them a toolkit for discussing how their part of the machinery can input, so they can sort of listen to a customer story and say, well, actually, look, we can tweak this here, and if you then can tell me that has an impact on an outcome for the customer, then I feel like I'm part of
on
it.
board.
Yeah,
fantastic. Because actually, that just reminds me, the thing I was talking to Melvin about, because I wrote a piece about grit in your customer experience, and he was like, that's similar to we talk about removing annoyances.
Right.
And that's kind of where we got, and I was like, let's kind of compare notes and sort of thing. And he told me a story about Router in Oslo, and rather than making customers stand out in the bus shelter, they allowed them to wait in the bus.
Right.
I mean, you just go, it seems so obvious, but you're just thinking, but from a customer's perspective and just their overall experience of it, they're like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And all sorts of different sort of things around there. So, before we sort of wrap up, I mean, that's really, really interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the book or this sort of service design within business before I ask you my last question that I always ask?
So Phil, I think I've talked quite a lot about what we've been doing to bring that customer experience through the sort of design approach, which is very visual, and then play that into an organisation.
Sure.
I think the middle bit of the book around the business, the challenges we face we look at there are more about helping a business. So that the third angle, maybe in the book, is more about helping a business move forward. So that might be about trying different business scenarios. So we talk about.
Is that like the business drivers kind of section, or the actual business section?
Yeah, the kind of business impact section.
Right. Okay.
Where there's a challenge in that we're talking about kind of innovating business concepts rather than customer service things. So we've seen how a design approach can really help help people make decisions. We had a lovely story actually. Almost the first project Livework did. We were working with Orange, and they had they were kind of talking about a challenge they had about recognising that some of their customers are really valuable and some really aren't, and how could they recognise that? And we made a prototype of a sort of premium service which got you to the front of the queue on the call centre, and a number of other.
Who was this for, sorry?
Orange.
Oh, is that the one where they kind of they they were charging people 50p or something to be able to jump to the front of the queue.
Well, I've seen that around now.
Which
is this wasn't that. This was
good.
more
Good, because I think that 50p sort of thing is horrific.
No,
the way
this
that
was a bit more like being invited to a premium credit card where they would say, "Hey, we really value you,
and then
here's a special customer service number for you."
That's fine. I get that, but the whole sort of thing about sort of I'm going to.
No, you pay for it. That's a little bit. That's like EasyJet approach to things, isn't it? Or Ryanair.
Who are getting better.
Yes. And they, so what we did, we actually made this invitation and a box that came in, and a couple of other perks, which I'm trying to remember, and we put it on the table with the marketing team, and one of them grabbed it, ran off, and delivered it, and it was that kind of just speed things up, like help you make a decision.
Yeah,
you can see it, and it's there in front of you.
You can show it to somebody. You're like, we need to do this.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, and the same kind of thing applies to what we've seen when people are trying to take something to market. Just we've worked quite a lot with product managers, or project managers, and just by making the thing more tangible, helping to brief different delivery partners, all sort of being the glue.
Yeah.
That has a similar effect.
Excellent. So that's brilliant. Then thank you for all of that. But so my last question I always ask in these interviews is this: is there anything that you'd like to shamelessly plug? I think I know the answer to it, but I'm giving you the opportunity to.
We'll shamelessly plug the book, which is available on all reputable booksellers, I think.
Fantastic.
Hopefully it's available.
Well, yes, and I'm sure it'll be a great success because they're actually, obviously I've taken a look at it, and there's a lot of other service design books out there, or rather there's a few, but some of them are quite meaty tomes, as it were, and I think the approach that you're taking, which is actually much more of a storytelling approach and applied context, is much more digestible. So I'm looking forward to actually going through it cover to cover rather than actually skimming it.
Great.
But Ben, thank you for your time today. That's been
good.
That's been great.
Yeah. Thank you.